Indie games are currently the bread and butter of the PC gaming world. I mean, sure, we all love a AAA title, but they're all starting to die out. Every single year, more and more games are being released on Steam, and when I say that, I don't just mean like one or two actual games. The number is usually a few hundred extra every single year over the last decade. But that's with the exception of 2019. I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but it's fine, we move. When it comes to indie titles, there are some that will just flop. Some that you probably haven't even heard of, and then there's some cult classics. Games that, even though they were considered tiny at launch, have grown and blossomed into something that is just incredible. So the main example of indie success that I want to talk about is going to be Stardew Valley, but I think that it would be weird to not talk about like the first instance in my lifetime. So the first indie title that took the world by storm that I can remember, that isn't Microsoft because, you know, that's a bit too obvious with Minecraft, it was probably Flappy Bird, that stupid little iPhone game that ruined so many people's lives. Remember when the game got removed from the App Store and you had people trying to sell their iPads or phones with it on for thousands of pounds? Like, it was utterly ridiculous. Anyway, that was slightly off topic and I'm sorry, but I want to talk about the pros to indie games in general, because they're massively growing in popularity. The first thing to consider when thinking about picking up an indie game versus a AAA title is most likely going to be the price. Most of the time, the AAA games can be triple the price or more of an indie title, which is madness. Like, look at two of my personal favourites, Stardew Valley and Phasmophobia, both of which are under £15, whereas pretty much every single AAA title right now is coming out at £60, which is beyond insane. There's also a lot of issues right now with launches, so I'm not sure if anyone else has noticed this, but the ridiculous amount of issues coming with most games being released right now, you can probably understand. Like, when an indie studio is going to release a game, they usually don't have a lot of leeway for this error. This is for a lot of reasons mainly, but with most AAA titles, the game is going to sell either way, right? So there's a lot of money for their marketing campaign, so chances are people are going to be able to actually see the game coming out, whereas with indie games they rely a lot more on like people creating content on them, using word of mouth to try and get more people to give their games a go. So with this method, the game really needs to be the best that it can be, because if it doesn't get good reviews, the chances are it's less likely to get a sale, but the sales mean a lot more for these smaller games than they do for the AAA titles. Now, most indie titles will just fly under the radar, but when we're talking about cult classics and indie titles that have just absolutely boomed, think back to 2021, when Among Us was one of the biggest games ever. That's a tiny indie title. You could buy the game on PC for £3.99, and it was incredible. Some of the best content of 2021 on YouTube came from just all the people who were sat down playing Among Us. I remember spending some of my time in lockdown just sitting down and watching the Sidemen play through it almost daily with my housemates. You can also have games like Hades, Undertale, Celeste, and even Valheim. All of these just blew off the roof for Twitch for like a couple of weeks, which is insane to think about. Now, at the start of this video, I said that I wanted to talk about Stardew Valley. This is because it honestly is one of the greatest stories that I've ever read about. There's this singular guy who originally developed the game. His name is Eric, but he goes by Concerned Ape. This game was originally designed to be similar to Harvest Moon because he personally felt like there wasn't a good game in the series for a long time. He wasn't even wanting to be a game developer. The man did a degree in computer science, but because he was struggling to get a job in his field, he decided to try and make a game to show off his artistic side and get a few more skills under his belt. He originally started making this game in 2011, and it being released in 2016 on PC through Steam, and from there it just kind of blossomed. The game has been ported over to every single console, and it's one of the most well-known indie titles. During the first 2 weeks of Stardew hitting the shelves, it sold 400,000 copies across Steam and GOG, hitting over 1 million copies sold within 2 months. In 2017, the game came out on Nintendo Switch, right? This game came out in October, and by December, it was the most downloaded game on the Switch library for the entire year. We then run to the end of 2021, where this game has now sold over 15 million copies across all libraries, which is absolutely insane considering it's just a small indie title. So the first time that I played this game, it was actually on the Nintendo Switch, and even then, I just thought it was beautiful. It was one of the greatest things about this game, because it literally runs on anything. It's not incredibly graphically demanding, so when you're playing on literally anything, it can still look as good. Like, I basically only play it at the moment on my Switch and on my MacBook, and obviously we know that games don't run great on Mac. Now when it comes to indie games, the chances are that they aren't going to look as great as the AAA titles, because, they're being released by massive developers with huge teams. But when it comes to games, it's not always just about the graphics. One of the biggest things with these games is that the developer will just work on the game until they are happy with it. This means that people are potentially working on these games for years before they're actually released. I think the easiest way to compare this is probably with music. So think of an artist or a band. They usually have their entire life to release their first album, right? So that's usually why the first album is considered the best. And then after that, they've probably got 2 to 3 years to release another album before they start to lose that relevancy. AAA developers usually try to release a game every few years for the same reason, whereas an indie developer will just release a game when it's ready, and then when they're actually happy with it. And to me, this is a great thing. It also does stop all of these issues that we have with large developers just releasing these games that are completely broken because their publishers are telling them they need to get the game out as quickly as possible. So let me know, what's your favourite indie game? Are you someone that prefers the indie games, or are you more of a AAA gamer? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Remember to subscribe and hit the thumbs up, and take it easy.